Welcome back to the New Jersey Morning Show. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. Today, we are joined by a former Navy helicopter pilot and federal prosecutor who has served New Jersey's 11th congressional district in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2019. Recently, she made headlines by announcing her bid to become the next governor of New Jersey. Please welcome Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill to the show. Mikey, happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Congratulations on this big step forward in your career. What inspired you to take this step and run for governor of the Garden State?
I really want to get engaged in how we make life a little bit easier for people. It feels like there are so many people who feel like year after year they just can't get ahead, that housing prices are still too high, grocery prices are still too high, the cost of childcare is really unaffordable. And so I want to get engaged on that to make sure we're lowering costs and making New Jersey more affordable. And let's face it, a lot of people understand these issues. But what I think we need and what I think I bring is a fresh perspective and a new generation of leadership. I've never accepted the status quo, but rather really looking for ways to actually deliver on these key issues.
I mentioned that you've been serving Congress since 2019. Did you envision this next step, though? Did you ever picture yourself governor of the state you know and love?
I didn't even envision myself in Congress until I ran. That had not been the path that I thought I would take. And yet, I have to say, I have really so loved public service. I love figuring out ways to make people's lives better. I love new challenges too. I have to say that when I first got into Congress, I was told you'll never get anything done for a while. You're a freshman member, it's too hard. And yet, by only my second term in Congress, I was named the most effective lawmaker from New Jersey. So I love to not, like I said, not accept the status quo, but rather figure out how we can get something accomplished, how I can deliver.
So you mentioned the issues affecting citizens here in New Jersey. How do you see yourself addressing and making action with these issues?
I think if you're wondering how I would be as governor, you can look at a lot of the work I've done as a member of Congress. So fighting hard to lower taxes by getting a fix in for the state and local tax deduction cap twice through the House of Representatives. Making sure we're making those federal investments into infrastructure like the Gateway Tunnel project, the most important infrastructure project that the nation is funding right now. But also working hard on efforts to address housing prices. So putting forth legislation as I'm working on to support development in Brownsfields or developing business parks and office parks which are being underutilized, ensuring we're supporting startup costs for mom and pop grocery stores so we can add competition into the market and drive down costs while at the same time addressing the issues of food deserts. Working with the Senate and Senator Warren on making sure nobody pays more than 7% of their income on childcare costs, which is such a huge piece of how people decide whether or not to go back to work. And it's really impacting our economy at this point. So these are all the things I've been working on in Congress, a constant focus on how do I make people's lives easier? How do I lower cost? How do I ensure that families here in New Jersey can get ahead?
How do you envision working with those across the aisle? Obviously, the presidential election, New Jersey surprised a lot of people with just how people voted, especially in Passaic County. So how do you combat that?
I was really pleased to see that even in this tough kind of election, how much support I received in the election. And I think that's because I've always done that. If you're trying to address flooding in my district, floodwaters don't determine whether or not you're a Democrat or a Republican. It's just everybody is impacted by that. People who are looking to steal your car aren't knocking on doors or making sure what your voter registration is before they determine which cars to steal. These are broad-based concerns in my district. I've always worked with people who just want to solve these types of issues in the district. So We have a task force to address flooding with a lot of Democratic and Republican mayors. We've worked with a lot of municipalities on car theft legislation, and a lot of different police chiefs throughout the district. So these are issues that I've constantly addressed, and I'm always looking to build broad coalitions of people around those things that are going to best address the needs of New Jersey.
So it's obviously a very crowded field on the Democrat side going into the governor race. What do you think sets you apart as the candidate?
I think what I'd love to bring here, and what I think is somewhat unique, is a fresh perspective. Given my military background, given my years of leadership in the military and the strong voice I've been in Congress, I think really bringing that to bear and making sure, again, that I'm not going to accept the status quo. I'm going to cut through red tape and make sure that our government works for people here in New Jersey.
You're also the only mother of 4 that's running. So I know that, we talk about that every time I interview you. I just marvel how you're able to balance. And there's something to be said for that as well.
You're exactly right. I think, like so many parents, I've been worried about how COVID is going to impact my kids and working really hard to make sure that they're on a stable footing after that. And we just worry, as parents, you just always worry about your kids. You're always convinced, that there's something more you can be doing as a parent to better parent them. And I think COVID has added to this anxiety. Are they doing okay? Are they experiencing learning loss? Do they have mental health issues? What can I do to better prepare them for the world? And that's why, I've been so focused on things like high impact tutoring, making sure all those kids that maybe got a little bit behind in that COVID or the aftermath of COVID are able to get back on track with their learning. It's why I've been focused on mental health in our schools and suicide prevention in many of our schools across the state, and getting money in from the federal government for that, constantly addressing all those needs of kids and families. And I think part of that comes from, as you mentioned, being a mom of 4 kids.
It's hard to believe we're celebrating the 5th year anniversary of COVID coming up in January, but it sounds like we are still feeling the impact.
Yeah, I think we are. I think it's forever sort of shaken maybe our belief in being on solid ground, if you will. I think, like a lot of people, I never could have envisioned that at the beginning of March 2020, I'd be living my life, and by the end of March 2020, my kids' schools would be shut down. I wouldn't be going into the office. And some of that would last over a year or more. I mean, this was like nothing I'd ever anticipated would hit us. And I also think that in so many ways, we saw a lack of leadership in certain areas and a failure of leadership. And so moving forward, everyone, I think, is still kind of making decisions based on maybe a little bit of that fragility, a little bit of that instability. I'd also say that we have an epidemic of loneliness going on across the country, people who just never quite got back on their feet after COVID. And that's, again, why I'm constantly working to address these issues and bring the support to communities that they need, so that we can feel like we are on stable ground, so people can have faith in the leadership in their government. And that's something I'm really focused on bringing to Trenton.
Yeah, and since COVID, the taxes have just gotten higher, and so has the cost of living. What specific plans do you have to address those issues?
So I think there's a couple things that have been really hitting people hard. One thing is the cost of housing. Housing prices have just gone through the roof. And we have that missing middle, if you will, people who want to afford their starter home, their first home, or people who want to sell the home that they raised their family in and downsize. And so, in so many places in our state, that just feels impossible. I was hearing from one friend of mine, her daughter's living at home, even though she has a good job with good benefits. Her daughter's boyfriend is living at home, even though he has a good job with good benefits. They'd both really like to move in together and afford a home, but they just can't do it despite having really good wages. There's just nothing available in their price range. And we know that not having those homes pushes people into the rental market, drives rental prices up, and pushes people out of that and further away. And in too many cases, we're just seeing our workforce having to come from pretty far afield, states like Pennsylvania, We want people to be able to afford to live here. We want people to be able to take the jobs here. We want people to be able to take advantage of the opportunity here. So working hard to drive that down is why I'm working to introduce in Congress legislation to support development and redevelopment of office parks, which are being underutilized, or brownfields, so we can remediate that and build homes. We're a densely populated state, so we need to take advantage of some of the already developed areas to build out the houses that we need. I've also have a piece of legislation to address grocery store prices to really push into those startup costs. So mom and pop grocers can start new grocery stores, which will drive down costs as you add competition into the market, but at the same time will allow food deserts to take advantage of this legislation so that they can open up small grocery stores in areas that don't have access to fresh produce, for example, and drive down costs at the same time. So these are some of the things I'm working on. I want to continue to bring those into New Jersey so we can continue to work on that affordability piece.
Finally, as you gear up for a very busy 2025 potentially, what's the one message you want voters to take away from your campaign?
I think a new perspective, a new generation of leadership, not accepting the status quo, really making sure that I'm doing everything I can to break through the red tape and deliver for families.
All right. Well, Congresswoman Cheryl, it's always a pleasure to be joined by you. Thank you so much. And we'll be watching your campaign.
That sounds great. And thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Up next, how a procedure at an Ocean County hospital helped a local Santa Claus get back on his sleigh. Welcome back to the New Jersey Morning Show. Our next story is nothing short of a holiday miracle. For years, Ronald Fierro, a 73-year-old retired teacher from Brick, has brought joy to children as Santa Claus at the local mall. But earlier this year, a non-healing ulcer on his foot threatened not just his ability to play Santa, but his leg and potentially his life. Thanks to the expert care and groundbreaking surgery at Hackensack Meridian Ocean University Medical Center, Ron is back on his feet, ready to spread holiday cheer. Joining us today is the vascular surgeon who led his treatment, Dr. Nicholas Russo, to share this incredible journey. Dr. Russo, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you? Good morning.
Well, it sounds like you saved Christmas for so many. Congratulations on that. Tell us how the journey with Ron began.
Ron is an incredible person. He showed up sometime around the end of April, and he had this wound already for 2 months. And under the care of his podiatrist, they had concerns about his blood flow to his foot and his ability to heal. So they did the right thing, and they sent him over to vascular in order to be evaluated. We did our non-invasive testing, which showed that he had severe disease in the lower leg, and the wound looked ischemic in nature, which is something that you can typically see on physical exam. So typically in that scenario, we would schedule the patient for an angiogram, but Ron, being Ron and dedicated to his craft, he decided to postpone his first angio in order to go to a Santa Claus convention. And that's when I knew I had met a very, very special patient. So he subsequently came back, returned, did the angiogram. It showed that he had severe disease in his leg that was not amenable to a non-invasive approach. And so being a vascular surgeon allows us to tailor specific personalized treatment to the patients because we're capable of doing both non-invasive and invasive techniques. And for Ron's specific case, he required an open operation where we would have to bypass from the good vessels in his leg to the good vessels in his foot. And so that actually occurred in June. The surgery went fantastic. His cardiologist, his podiatrist, and the entire team got Ron ready and able to leave the hospital in just 3 short days. He did a brief stint at rehab, and a couple months later, he's back to walking on his feet without a cane, and everything's all healed up, and he's providing Christmas joy that I could never do.
Oh, you would make a good Santa doctor. I think so. Maybe not the dedication of Ron, and I'm so sorry he couldn't join us today. I know he was supposed to be here, but a lot of work happening at the North Pole right now, obviously. How much joy does this bring you, though, in your profession to give people positive outcomes like this?
That's a great question. So most patients, they pick and choose kind of what they want to listen to their doctor about, which is always one of the frustrating things in medicine. But Ron is so passionate about what he does. He listened to everything everyone told him. He did everything we asked of him, and he did all the work, really. He did an incredible job at going to rehab. He did an incredible job at listening to the wound care specialists. He did everything he was asked. And as a vascular surgeon, that's honestly the highest compliment I could ever receive.
Can you dive into, in layman's terms, why pedal bypass surgery was the best option for him?
Sure. So lots of arteries in the body. They go everywhere from the brain down to the toes. And in the leg, we have multiple branches. There's a main artery. It's called the superficial femoral artery. His artery was actually intact. Ron's problem was from the knee down. Those arteries are typically affected by diabetes. And diabetes is a leading cause of hurting those arteries. So he essentially had no significant, what's called inline flow, meaning no continuous road. So it's as if we shut down the highway from the knee to his foot. And so in order to be able to get blood flow directly to his foot, we go around the blockages. And to do that, we use his own vein. And Ron was actually this was easy for me to explain to Ron because Ron had actually had coronary bypass in the past, which most people are familiar with, which is called a cabbage. And so Ron had already had a good idea of what it was going to take, and he was on board from day one.
Talk about the training that led you to where you are today.
So training in Albany was at times tough and very cold, right up there with the North Pole. And I was blessed to be trained by some of the best people to do vascular surgery. Ralph Clem Darling, Sean Roddy, Jeffrey Nath. There are Benjamin Chang. They are phenomenal teachers. They are excellent surgeons. And they instilled in me, don't give up attitude when it comes to this. And that's what you need to have to save a patient's leg. You have to really fight for their leg with them because it's grueling. You know, you have wounds that are sometimes large, you have pain, and you fight sometimes diabetes, you're fighting coronary disease, you're fighting all the different competing factors that led to the disease to begin with. And so trying to optimize the patient and getting them to stop smoking and getting them to do everything that you need to do is sometimes a daunting task. And Ron really genuinely made it easy. It was an absolute pleasure working with him, and it's great to be able to watch him do what he loves.
Absolutely. What is a special motto or piece of advice that you give to your other patients who might be delaying care or facing similar health challenges?
That is one of the best questions you could ever ask. So I am a firm believer in giving the patient all the options. I'm like a waiter, essentially. Give the patient all the options, inform them of what each option entails, and allow them to understand the positive and negative impact that they have with their choices. Because at the end of the day, you have to be on board yourself to want to be better, to want to get the care, and to want to have a successful outcome. So as a physician, I think the most important thing we can do is provide information. And I think sometimes some people can be busy and rushed and things like that. So I really put an emphasis on sitting down and taking time with the patients to go through every option and make sure you have every question answered so you can make the best decision for you. Because at the end of the day, I'm not the one that has to do the rehab work. I'm not the one that has to care for the wounds on a daily basis. I have to provide you with a great operation or an intervention, and I have to kind of set you free a little bit. So it's important for you to understand what that entails. And I think that's really the crux of good medicine, giving the patient all the options and allowing them to understand what they're in for.
Well, doctor, I can tell that you listen, and I just love the holistic approach that you take to your practice. And we thank you, and so do all the kids out there, for saving Christmas. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
So I work at Jersey Coast Vascular, 425 Jack Martin Boulevard and Ocean University Medical Center. I'm available 24/7 because that's what we do. And there's always somebody available to get in touch with us in the ER or in the office at any given time.
Well, doctor, thank you so much for your life-changing work, and wishing you and your family a joyful holiday season.
Thank you so much. It's been a blessing.
Up next, some holiday gift recommendations from our friends at the Hoboken Library. Welcome back to the New Jersey Morning Show. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. With the holiday season in full swing, many of us are looking for that perfect gift. But what if the perfect present isn't a gadget or a sweater, it's a story? A recent survey shows that more than half of us plan to give books as gifts this year. Joining us today is someone who knows books better than most, Jenny Pooh, the dynamic director of the Hoboken Public Library. She's here to share her expert picks for every reader on your list and tell us about the exciting things happening at the library. Jenny, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
Happy holidays to you, and I love a good book. I just wish I had the time to dive into them because with two babies, it's, madness. But a recent survey says 54% of people plan to get books this year. Why do you think books make such a meaningful present?
Stories are timeless. And as we see the explosion of podcasts, movies, we can't get enough stories. I think stories unite us all. That's why they're enduring, and that's why they're so popular.
Yeah, well, tell us some fantastic recommendations for this holiday season.
Sure. Well, first we have a fantastic book list, which is on our website. So we have a book list hand-selected by our librarians. We'll start with one of my favorite, a local author and one of Hoboken's favorite, Rocky Mercandani's newest book, Mama's Roti, a beautiful storybook that you can read with your kids, with the whole family, about the power of a simple piece of bread, a roti, its origins, and how really bread is life. It's perfect for the holiday season. Beautiful illustrations. Again, a local Jersey author. Recommend this for your younger readers.
I love that. Yes, go ahead. I can't wait to see some more.
I have a whole stack, so let me know when you want to stop.
Keep going.
On the same theme of Thanksgiving and being with family, I love a good story that involves food. So last year, the big one was Crying in H Mart. This year, it's Slow Noodles by a Cambodian author, Chantong Nguyen. And this takes place, this is a story about her survival through a really difficult time period in Cambodia. And interspersed with that are recipes from her family while she tells the story of persevering through civil war and then, with her family. Beautiful book, different kind of format from, say, a regular cookbook. Can't recommend this enough. Slow Noodles. For a biography, if you like celebrity biographies, Al Pacino's Sonny Boy is a quick read, really gripping. It talks about his origins starting out in the Bronx and a really poor childhood and then rising his way through Hollywood. This, I happen to have a large print. You can find this in your library or local bookstore. Now, we know that Squid Game Season 2 is coming up, highly anticipated. For fans of Squid Game and Hunger Games, we got a compilation for you. Snow Globe. First, this is just translated from its Korean version into English. Page Turner, if you like that, Squid Games fan, Snow Globe is for you. For the fantasy lovers, Fae fans, fairies, I personally am not, but this cover is beautiful. This is in a series, map of other lands. Recommend this for fairy and fantasy lovers. I'm really excited about this because I'm a big fan of sci-fi. So if you loved the series The Expanse, same author, this comes The Mercy of Gods. This has been really popular so far. So if you love The Expanse, take this. And I will say up just a few more. The Office fans. So this is for folks who, this is a great gift. If you don't know what to give your colleague, and this is for like the cubicle culture, I hope this finds you well. Also, isn't this a great cover? Get this for your office mate. Also, it's if you love good humor, this is it. Two more. For the fans who, for your friends or family members who want to do something productive, this is she's a fiction writer, but she's come up with a book called 1,000 Words. Gives you kind of actionable steps to start being a creator, very in bite size, starting with writing 1,000 words. And I saved the big one for last. This is Long Bright River. Now, it's not a new book, but it's a staff favorite for can't put down books. What's currently really hot right now is God of the Woods by Liz Moore, and that's been flying off the shelf. But if you can't get a hold of that in your local library, start with Long Bright River by Liz Moore.
Jenny, I love those recommendations. The one that piqued my interest the most was the 1,000 Words, because I love to write, but it's madness life right now, right? So sometimes you just can't like sit and actually do it. So I'm going to definitely pick that one up. Now, I also know you're a strong advocate for the right to read. What are some banned books you'd recommend for readers this holiday season?
Gosh, banned books I recommend reading. I mean, a classic. Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, which I think people are still surprised is still being banned across the country continuously. Read that book and I think figure out for yourself why you think this is being banned. Raina Telgemeier's books are still being banned. I don't get it. They're super popular for middle grade readers. And one of my favorite all-time books is The Absolutely True Story of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. That doesn't go out of season. It's hilarious. If you love hijinks about really coming of age stories of a kid growing up in a reservation and, moving between different worlds, you can't go wrong with that.
Great recommendations. I also know you encourage people to shop at independent bookstores. Why is it important to support local booksellers, especially during the holidays?
Local businesses are lifelines of our communities. And I think shopping at a local bookstore is you're supporting your neighbors, your friends, you're supporting the lifeline of the community. And local bookstores know your community best. So even though I am a librarian and work in a library, I go to my local bookstore right here in Hoboken, Little City Books, all the time for their recommendations to hear what people in Hoboken are reading. So I recommend you go to your independent bookstore in your town.
You're also obviously a big advocate for libraries. What role do you see libraries playing in communities during the holiday season and year-round?
Year-round, we're hubs, like watering holes. Anyone can come to the library, not just to talk about books, but to attend a program, to learn a new skill, pick up a new language. I think the role of the library in the community is that we're the one place that anyone can come to for free to discover, to connect, to grow. So at this holiday season, we're going to be very busy because we have people not just checking out our book list, but also checking out holiday travel books, very popular for our library and many libraries across the country.
Well, as an author, I don't know if you know that about me, but I am an author.
Whoa.
I
Wow.
am. Yes, I came out with a novel in 2016. I'll talk to you about other things offline. But I thank you for just being such an advocate for local authors and books everywhere. Where can people find out more about the Hoboken Library?
HobokenLibrary.org. And thank you so much for being a writer, for being an advocate. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you, Jenny. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
And stay with us. There's more news, talk, and weather coming up next.